The first thing I saw when I woke up from surgery wasn't the ceiling or the nurses or even the 4 pumping meds into my arm, it was the clock on the wall. And then the empty chair beside my bed. My name's Mason Hill. I'm 28. Or was when I had both legs working properly. Senior software developer, 2-time team lead, guy who built a 6-figure life from scratch and thought family loyalty worked both ways. Spoiler, it doesn't. The accident was simple, guy ran a red light, I was the unlucky bastard crossing the street at the wrong moment. They said the impact threw me 6 feet. I don't remember the flight, just the sound of metal and bone deciding they were done cooperating. Woke up 3 days later, full of screws, rods, and the kind of morphine that makes your nightmares feel polite. What I expected was my mom holding my hand. My dad with his be strong routine. My younger brother Alex pacing the room, full of dramatic guilt. You know, the usual family in crisis package. What I got was silence. Not even a vase of pity flowers. I thought maybe I'd missed something. Maybe they stepped out for coffee. Maybe visiting hours were strict. So I picked up my phone. That's when I saw it. Instagram story. My mom standing in front of the Colosseum. Caption, family time in Rome, Italy, red heart, so grateful. Next slide, my dad with a glass of wine. Alex in sunglasses. Smiles all around. I scrolled down. The date on the post? The same morning I was being wheeled out of surgery. And then I saw the charge notification, $3,482.56. Rome Hotel. On my credit card. Something inside me went still. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just quiet. Like my brain hit a switch labeled, enough. I stared at the screen for a long time, then whispered to no one in particular. Oh, so that's how it is. That was the moment I stopped being their provider and started planning their eviction from my life. The surgeon came in later that afternoon with a clipboard and a tired smile. Said the operation went well, all things considered. External fixation on both legs, 3 months minimum before I could stand again. Maybe 6 to walk. Maybe longer. I nodded like I heard him. But I wasn't thinking about my legs. I was thinking about how my family toasted Prosecco in Rome while doctors screwed steel into my femurs. Back in college, I used to joke that I was the tech guy with a family subscription. I'd send money home every month, small at first, then larger as my salary grew. When I got promoted, I paid off my parents' mortgage. When Alex totaled his car, I bought him a used Camry. When Dad's business loan got denied, I co-signed without blinking. It never felt like a burden until I saw those Rome photos. A nurse named Riley was the first person who actually looked me in the eye that day. Short blonde hair, no-nonsense vibe, clipboard tucked under one arm. You've had a hell of a week, she said, checking my phone. Anyone coming by today? I hesitated. Maybe tomorrow. She nodded but didn't look convinced. That night, I went through my accounts. Airline charges, restaurant tabs, tour guides, all of it run through my Amex. They'd used my emergency card. The one I gave them after Dad's minor heart scare, just in case. Guess this Roman holiday counted as a medical emergency. I stared at the transaction history like it might apologize. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened my banking app and revoked every automatic payment. The mortgage? Gone. Alex's car insurance? Canceled. The utilities on their house? Cut off. I sat there, legs full of steel, feeling more powerful than I had in years. They left me in a hospital bed. I was leaving them in the real world with no safety net. I didn't sleep that night. Partly because of the pain, metal bolts in your bones will do that, but mostly because of the quiet. Not the hospital kind either. The kind that creeps in when you finally realize you've been used. The next morning, I asked Riley for a copy of my patient discharge plan. She raised an eyebrow. You're not going anywhere for at least a few weeks. Still, I said, I like to be prepared. That was always my thing. Mr. Reliable. The one who planned ahead, kept spare chargers in his backpack, read contracts down to the footer. The kind of guy you leaned on when your life got messy, and my family's lives were always messy. I was the glue. I was also the ATM. Around noon, I got a text from Mom. How are you feeling? We land next Friday. No call. No, we're sorry. Just a status check like I was a pet they'd boarded for the week. I didn't answer. Instead, I called my lawyer. Her name's Katrina Vega. Brilliant, surgical, no patience for drama. She handled my will last year when I hit my first 7-figure bonus. I explained the situation, the accident, the credit card, the unpaid loyalty. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, do you want to punish them or protect yourself? Both, I said. She didn't miss a beat. Then let's get started. We drafted a cease access order. Froze the secondary card on my business account. She pulled up the deed to my parents' house, bought in my name, of course, and scheduled the transfer of property back to a trust under my control. By the time dinner was served, I'd erased every legal tie that bound me to their bills. I wasn't being cruel. I was just done being generous to people who saw me as a wallet with a pulse. 3 days later, Riley wheeled me into the hospital's therapy room. My legs were wrapped like Christmas hams, and every joint below the waist felt like it belonged to someone else. But my hands? My hands still worked just fine. And so did my mind. While I grunted through range of motion exercises, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. It was Alex. Hey bro, just checking in. Rome was amazing, can't wait to tell you all about it. Mom said you're doing okay? Anyway, shoot me a text when you're up. Oh, and my insurance lapsed? I think the auto payment glitched, can you check it? I laughed. Out loud. In front of the nurse. Not because it was funny. Because the audacity was Olympic level. That night, I had Riley wheel me to the hospital courtyard so I could call a lift. She gave me the look, that you sure about this? Look, but didn't stop me. 30 minutes later, I was outside the house I grew up in. My name was still on the mailbox. I still had the key. Inside, the same furniture I'd paid for. Same flat screen I bought for Dad's birthday. Same couch my brother borrowed from my apartment when he broke up with his girlfriend. But something felt different now. It didn't feel like home. It felt like inventory. I went room to room. Pulled out anything that belonged to me, personal documents, a few of my tech gadgets, an old safe buried in the coat closet. Left the framed family photo face down on the kitchen counter. Then I checked their flight info. Return was scheduled for Friday, 4:45 p.m. So I made one more call, this time to the airline. Hi, yes, I said. I'd like to cancel a reservation. 3 tickets, return from Rome. There's something poetic about canceling someone's flight while they're sipping wine on a Roman balcony you paid for. No warning. No explanation. Just a quiet little digital snip. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was just balance. That night, I returned to the hospital sore, tired, and more at peace than I'd been in years. Riley helped me settle back into bed, didn't ask questions, didn't judge. She just raised an eyebrow and said, whatever you did today, you've got that no regrets look. She wasn't wrong. The next morning, Katrina sent me the finalized docs, trust papers, card closures, revocations. All neat. All legal. I'd even added one final clause, no one but me could reopen those access points. They'd call it betrayal. But really, I just stopped sponsoring theirs. At noon, I got another text, this time from my mom. Hey honey, there's a mix-up with our flight. Can you call Delta? We're stuck here and don't know what's happening. I left it on read. By evening, the tone changed. Mason, this is serious. We're stranded. Please fix this. Still nothing. Then Alex chimed in. Dude. Not cool. We need that flight back. Do something. I stared at the screen, half tempted to reply. But I didn't. Instead, I messaged Katrina one more time. Can you send them a formal notice? Something that makes it clear I'm not their account manager anymore. She replied with a thumbs up and 3 words already on it. That night, Riley lingered a little longer than usual after checking my vitals. She stood at the foot of my bed and said, you don't strike me as the type who lets people walk all over him. Used to be, I said. Not anymore. She nodded. Good. Then she added, softer, and you're not alone in this. I didn't say anything back. But for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel like I had to. Friday afternoon hit with the kind of silence that crackles. I sat by the window in my hospital room, legs still in their medieval scaffolding, watching the clouds roll in over Chicago. Somewhere over the Atlantic, my family was just learning what economy class felt like when you have no confirmed seat, no access to your card, and no backup plan. At 5:03 p.m., my phone lit up. Voicemail from Mom. Mason, we're at the airport. There's some issue with our return tickets. They're saying they were canceled. Did you do something? We're exhausted. We need to talk. Please call me. 3 minutes later, Alex texted. Bro. Not funny. We're stuck. I don't even have roaming. Dad's yelling at Lufthansa. You need to fix this now. I didn't. Because fixing it would mean I was still playing my part, the fixer, the funder, the fool. Instead, I called Katrina. Think we should offer them something? I asked. Like what? She said. Options. So that's what we did. She drafted a formal letter. Not a rant. Not a revenge manifesto. Just facts, plain and cold. All financial support had ceased. All accounts tied to me were terminated. Access to my funds was permanently revoked. And if they wished to be part of my life moving forward, it would be through court-approved mediation. It wasn't punishment. It was policy. They had treated me like a financial plan, not a person. Now they'd get a structure to match. I had Riley print it, seal it, and send it to their hotel through express courier, signature required. I imagined the front desk clerk saying, "Delivery for Mr. Hill." I imagined my father opening it. I imagined the silence in that overpriced suite. And for the first time in a long time, I leaned back against the pillow, closed my eyes, and smiled. The next morning, I woke up to 21 missed calls and a family group chat that had suddenly resurrected from the dead. I didn't bother scrolling through it all, just skimmed the highlights. "Mom, can we please just talk about this like a family?" "Dad, this is childish, Mason. You're being dramatic." "Alex, you're seriously going to ice out your own family over one vacation?" It wasn't the lies that got me. It was the entitlement. As if everything I'd done up to this point was a baseline service I owed them. Like my money came with a subscription model they'd never had to pay for. I muted the thread and turned off the screen. A few hours later, Katrina called. "They've responded." "To the letter?" "More like to the reality check," she said. "Your dad asked if mediation includes restoring financial access in good faith." I laughed. Of course he did. But Katrina wasn't smiling. "Mason, do you actually want to reconcile?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because the question deserved a clean answer. "I want the truth," I said finally. "Not the show. Not the guilt trips. Not the gaslighting. If they can't come to the table without expecting a payout, they're not family. They're clients. And I'm closed for business." She nodded on the other end. "Then I'll keep the line drawn." That night, Riley brought in my evening meds and paused at the doorway. "You okay?" "Getting there." She leaned against the wall. "You're handling this better than most people would." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I've just finally learned that being the good son doesn't mean being the unpaid one." She cracked a half smile. "Well, if you ever need someone on your team who's not in it for the money, I make a mean lentil soup and can lift more than I look like I should." I smiled back, and for once it didn't feel like work. They got home Sunday night. I knew because the ring cam on the front porch of their house. My house, legally, lit up with movement. Mom stood there, tugging her suitcase like it personally betrayed her. Dad looked red-faced, already mid-lecture. Alex was wearing one of my old hoodies. Again, I didn't watch the whole clip, just saw enough to know. They were rattled. Good. That night I got an email. Subject line, "Let's clear the air." From my mom. "Mason, I know things got confused. We should never have left without telling you. It wasn't meant to hurt you, sweetie. The trip had already been paid for and we thought you'd want us to enjoy it so you wouldn't worry." I almost laughed. "We're willing to talk, but this whole legal route feels extreme. You've always been the reasonable one. Please don't shut the door on your own family." Reasonable. That was their word for compliant. For don't rock the boat. For shut up and pay the bills. I didn't reply, but I forwarded the email to Katrina. Her response came 2 minutes later. "Classic. Let me guess. Next message will be love bombing or a health scare." She wasn't wrong. Monday morning, Dad texted, "Your mother's been very stressed. Her heart's been acting up again. If something happened to her, I hope you could live with this silence." Right on cue. But I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. The more pressure they applied, the more obvious it became. I was never the son they loved. I was the system they depended on, until it shut down. And now, they were scrambling. That afternoon, Riley walked in with my progress update. I'd improved more than expected. She smiled, almost proud. "You're tougher than you look," she said. I shrugged. "Bones heal." She paused. "And the rest?" I looked at her, really looked. The nurse who stayed overtime, who brought me food that didn't come from a tray, who saw me not as a patient, but a person. "The rest," I said, "might be better off without them." Tuesday morning, a letter arrived at the hospital. Handwritten, thick cream paper, the kind my dad used for business deals and false sincerity. It wasn't a get-well card. It was a proposition. Mason, if this is about money, we're willing to revisit things. We've discussed it as a family, and we're open to drafting a new arrangement. One that includes formal acknowledgement of your contributions over the years. An arrangement, like I was an employee who'd gone on strike. Not a son who'd been bleeding support into a bottomless hole for a decade. I folded the letter neatly and dropped it in the trash. Riley raised an eyebrow from across the room. Family drama? Family negotiation, I said. Apparently love comes with an adjustable rate. She sat in the chair beside me. You okay? I'm tired, I said. But not the usual kind. I'm tired of being the product. Riley didn't say anything, just nodded like someone who'd seen this story before, maybe lived a version of it herself. Later that day, Katrina called. They've reached out to my office, she said. Want to mediate. Their words. Let them, I said. You sure? I want it on record. No more side doors. No more guilt behind closed texts. They want back in. It goes through the front door, in daylight with terms. Roger that, she said. I'll set it up. That night, Riley brought me a bowl of soup she'd made herself. Hospital food is garbage, she said. You always cook for your patients? No, she said, not smiling. Just the ones whose families forget they're still human. I didn't know what to say to that, but I knew what I felt. Seen. For the first time in a long time. And maybe, just maybe, something more than just a broken man in a bed. Mediation was set for Thursday. Virtual at my request. I wasn't about to waste energy hauling broken legs into a room just to watch my dad frown in high definition. Katrina and I logged in early. She wore the same expression she used for tax audits and court depositions. Flat, surgical, ready to dissect every excuse before it finished breathing. 10:01, the screen flickered. There they were. Mom with her hair done like it was a TV interview. Dad already annoyed. Alex in the back. Sunglasses on his head indoors like he was hiding a hangover and a bruised ego. Hi, sweetie, Mom started. Voice syrupy. You look tired. I didn't respond. Katrina jumped in. Let's be clear. This is not a family reunion. This is mediation. Mason is willing to hear your position. Nothing more. Dad huffed. This is unnecessary. We're family. You left him alone in a hospital after major surgery, Katrina said, deadpan. On a trip you funded with his emergency credit card. I'd say we passed unnecessary a long time ago. They danced around the facts like they were allergic to them. Mom said they assumed I'd understand. Dad blamed a miscommunication. Alex tried to make a joke. No one laughed. Then Mom pivoted. We just want to find a way forward. As a family. Mason, what do you need from us? I looked at her for the first time. Nothing, I said. That's the whole point. They blinked. I continued. No more money. No more auto payments. No more favors disguised as love. If you want to be in my life, you show up as people, not invoices. Dad scoffed. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said. It makes me free. The call ended 15 minutes later. Katrina looked over at me. You did good. I didn't feel triumphant. Just clean. Later that evening, Riley helped me into the wheelchair and wheeled me outside. I heard, she said. Word travels fast? No, she smiled. Your face. It's different now. Yeah, I said. Feels like the first day I've actually owned my life. The day after mediation, something strange happened. There were no texts, no emails, no vague threats, no guilt-soaked apologies, no last-ditch efforts to clarify intentions. Just silence. And it was glorious. I spent the morning in physical therapy, trying to convince my right knee it still worked for a living. Riley was there, as usual, not hovering, just present. The kind of present that doesn't need to prove anything. You're not even swearing today, she joked as I pushed through another set. I think my pain threshold went numb right after that Zoom call, I muttered. By afternoon, Katrina called again. You're not going to believe this, she said. Try me. They filed a petition. I blinked. A petition? To request a reinstatement of shared financial responsibility. I let that sit for a second. So, they're suing me for cutting them off? Not technically suing. More like begging with a lawyer attached. But yes, I rubbed the bridge of my nose. Is there a legal term for grown adults weaponizing guilt like it's currency? She chuckled. Not yet, but we're getting close. I hung up and stared at the ceiling for a while. Not angry, not even surprised. But something shifted inside me again. Not a snap, just a quiet click, like the last puzzle piece sliding into place. I didn't need to defend myself. I didn't need to explain or negotiate or teach them how to love. I just needed to live. That night, Riley wheeled me back into the courtyard under a sky full of early spring stars. "You good?" she asked. "Better than I deserve," I said. "Correction," she replied. "Exactly as good as you've earned." She stayed next to me, quiet. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't bracing for a hit. I was finally breathing in peace. They must have thought I'd fold. That after a week of silence, I'd soften. That maybe guilt would do what entitlement couldn't. But they didn't know me anymore. Or maybe they never really did. Saturday morning, I got a knock on the hospital room door. Riley peeked her head in. "Visitor for you." I froze. "Family?" She shrugged. "Technically. But don't worry. I've got veto power." She opened the door wider, just enough for me to see Alex standing in the hallway, hands in his pockets, trying his best to look casual. I sighed. "Let him in." He shuffled in like a kid sent to apologize after breaking a neighbor's window. "Hey," he said. "You look, better." "I've got 14 screws in my legs," I replied. "So, relatively speaking." He looked down, then back up. "They don't know I came. Figured you'd block the group." "You figured right. I wanted to say sorry. For Rome. For everything. It was messed up. And I didn't fight them on it, and that's on me." I raised an eyebrow. And, he shifted. "Also, I've got nowhere to live." There it was. Turns out, once the auto payments stopped, so did his rent. His car got repossessed last week. He said it like it was the climax of a tragedy. "I know I messed up," he said. "But you're my brother." "No," I said. "I was your safety net." "That's not the same thing." He sat down, suddenly smaller. "So what, that's it? No help? No second chance?" I looked him in the eye. "I'm not cutting you out. I'm cutting off the version of you that thought I was a free ride." He didn't reply, just stood up slowly, nodded once, and walked out. Riley came back in with a protein shake and a raised eyebrow. "How'd that go?" "Exactly how it needed to. And I meant it. Because forgiveness doesn't always come with access. Sometimes it just comes with goodbye. There's a moment in recovery when the pain doesn't disappear. It just stops screaming. Mine came on a Monday. I was halfway through a physical therapy session. Sweat dripping, legs trembling, and Riley watching with arms crossed, and that subtle smirk she wore when she saw someone push past their limit. "You're almost upright," she said. "Define upright." I grunted. "Not dead," she replied. "It's progress." That night I got another letter. This one from Dad. Handwritten again. But the tone was different. Less polished. Less smug. Almost tired. "We didn't think. That's the truth. We've depended on you for too long. Maybe we started seeing you as a source, not a son. Your mother's not speaking to anyone. Alex is couch surfing. We're not asking for money. Just a conversation. We miss you." I stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it carefully and slid it into a drawer. Not because I forgave them. Not yet. But because, for once, they didn't ask for anything. Not a refund. Not a favor. Just a chance. Maybe that was a start. Maybe not. Later, Riley helped me walk the length of the hallway. No chair. No walker. Just 2 canes and a whole lot of stubbornness. At the end of the hall, I leaned against the railing, heart racing, legs burning, but still standing. Riley handed me a water bottle. "That was brutal," she said. "But you did it." "I've done worse," I said. Cutting off your family's credit line hurts more than squats. She laughed, for real this time, then sat beside me. You're different now. I'm myself now. She looked at me, eyes softer than I'd seen before. So what happens next? I didn't have a clean answer, but I knew this. I wasn't limping back to the past. I was walking into whatever came next on my own terms. 2 weeks later, I walked out of the hospital. Well, limped, but it was mine. Every shaky step earned. Riley offered to push me in the chair one last time. I said no. I needed to feel the weight on my legs, on my spine, and mostly on the space between who I was and who I refused to be again. Outside, Chicago was colder than I remembered. Or maybe I just stopped noticing weather during all the internal storms. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I had Katrina book a small conference room at a neutral downtown office space. Glass walls, boring carpet, nothing cozy. That was the point. I sent one invite. To my parents. Just them. No lawyers. No therapists. Just me, 2 canes, and the weight of every bill I'd ever paid on their behalf. They showed up late. Matching coats. Matching tension. Thanks for meeting us, my mom said, not quite looking at me. My dad's nod was more of a flinch. I didn't offer pleasantries. Just a manila folder placed in the center of the table. Inside, an itemized list of every financial transfer over the last 8 years. The documents transferring their house back into a neutral trust. A written statement of terms, no future financial dependence, no account access, no expectation of emergency help. I watched them read it. Watched the color drain. This feels harsh, my dad said. No, I said calmly. It feels final. My mom's voice cracked. So we're just, what? Cut off. I shook my head. You're invited back into my life. But only as people. Not dependents. You want a relationship? We start from zero. Not balance sheets. They didn't argue. Not this time. When the meeting ended, I stood slowly using my canes. Not dramatic. Just steady. And when I looked up, I realized they weren't seeing a bank account anymore. They were finally seeing a man. I didn't hear from them for a while after that meeting. No letters. No surprise drop-ins. No guilt-laced texts about holidays or how's your leg updates. And you know what? It was the best silence I'd ever known. I moved into a new place near the lake. Nothing flashy, clean lines, quiet neighbors, and a view that didn't ask me for anything. Riley helped me pick it out. Said it looked like someone who didn't take crap anymore lived there. She wasn't wrong. She still visited. Not out of obligation, but choice. We'd go on slow walks, make terrible coffee, watch old movies with subtitles I couldn't keep up with, and she pretended not to mind. One night, I asked her why she stayed past the job. Why she still showed up. She looked at me for a long second and said, because you stopped letting people use you and started letting people know you. That stuck with me. I used to think being a good son meant giving until it hurt. I used to think love was something you earned with invoices. I used to think boundaries were a sign of disloyalty. Now I know better. My family didn't fall apart when I stopped paying their bills. They just stopped pretending they cared once the perks dried up. And that was the best thing they could have done for me. Because it forced me to build something better with people who showed up even when I had nothing left to give. People like Riley. I may have left the hospital with screws in my legs and bruises in my heart, but I also walked out with something no credit card could buy. Peace. And the unshakable knowledge that the only life I'm responsible for is mine.